Welcome to the Imagine Exposure Vodcast. We have a very special guest this go around this episode. We have Dr. David Staten. Dr. David Staten, highly credentialed. If you went online, you would see that he's an associate professor of rehabilitative counseling, but also he's also the founder of HBCU Times Magazine. And so we have a very special guest, multifaceted, does a lot of great things. Dr. Staten, what program?
Thank you very much, man. It's a pleasure to be on with you here today. I'm a fan. I've watched you grow from being the SGA president at SC State University to the amazing things that you're doing now for the community, and as well as some of your entrepreneurial ventures. So it's just an absolute pleasure to be on the show with you here today.
I do appreciate it. And I was like, if I have the leader and the founder of HBCU Times Magazine, I gotta wear my paraphernalia. I got my bulldog gear on today.
That's right.
I had to make sure that was there. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Loyal son.
All right. So first question out for sure. You as well. First question out the gate. Who are you, and how would you define yourself?
Yes, excellent question. I'm David Staten. I'm a little country boy from Camden, South Carolina, raised in the church. I'm the youngest of 3 children. If I had to say, how do I define myself? I define myself as a family person, definitely, not just immediate family, but extended family. I'm a graduate of South Carolina State University. I graduated from SC State in 1992 with a major in criminal justice. I also received my master's degree from South Carolina State University in 1994 in Rehabilitation Counseling. And I received my PhD in counseling from the University of Iowa in 1998. After graduating from the University of Iowa, I worked as a counselor in Lancaster for 2 years, and then I returned back to South Carolina State University in 2001, where I've been a professor in the Rehabilitation Counseling program for the past 19 years. 3 years ago, my mother was battling with cancer. I was at home, back and forth with her. And, after chemo, oftentimes she would be tired and she would go to bed early, sometimes as early as 4:00 p.m. And one day I was just bored after she went to bed early, and I was playing with my phone, and I started the HBCU Times Facebook group. This was back in 2016. And shortly after she passed in 2017, I decided to launch the HBCU Times Magazine. The first night I created the group online, I think I started off with maybe 50 friends, but when I woke up the next morning, there were like 5,000 people in the Facebook group. And, eventually I just, decided that, I wanted to do something more far-reaching, something more impactful than just a social media, group with the magazine. So as I said previously, I'm a family person, God-fearing person. I'm a professional rehabilitation counselor educator. Also consider myself an entrepreneur. My wife and I, we also have a counseling practice called Merge Counseling and Coaching. So we're busy. I'm a multifaceted gentleman. I'm not, not one-dimensional at all. So I like to utilize the gifts that God gave me. So.
Absolutely. What would you say is your story in terms of work and vocation? If you had to kind of give us that through line, what would you say is your story?
I would say my story is you can come from any circumstance and have a decent career, a successful career. I was born, even though my family was always very supportive, we also struggled a lot financially. I grew up in poverty. In the neighborhood I grew up in, we don't see a lot of college graduates. So, my story is that regardless of your circumstances or your background, with proper guidance, with vision, with mentors, with resilience, you can accomplish your goals. So my story is for the people who are kind of looking at me is that no matter where you are and what you're doing in life, you can make something out of yourself regardless of the circumstances or the hand that you're dealt. And, you know, I've been blessed to have a number of mentors to guide me along that path. And, just getting to school to me was doing a lot. I'm a first generation college student. Even though my sister went to school, neither of my parents went to school. My parents were divorced, pretty much when I was born. So I grew up with my mother and my grandmother and two sisters. But we struggled. We struggled a lot. But from that struggle, I learned to be resilient. I learned the importance of family, and I learned the importance of perseverance and having goals and wanting to do something with my life. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
And you talked about mentorship. One gentleman who actually will be on the program, we know Mr. Terrence Tucker. One of the things that he talked about, he spoke very, very highly of how you have invested in his life. And so it's always great to hear that, one, you have the mentorship, but also that you've invested in other people as well.
Absolutely.
What would you say is the biggest, for sure. What would you say is the biggest misconception of your job?
I think when people look at my main job as a professor at South Carolina State University, I think the biggest misconception is people think that, because we only teach a certain number of classes and we're not required to be in our office hours, but a certain number of hours a week. I think people think that the job of a professor is easy, but what they don't see is that professors are not just responsible for teaching. Professors are also responsible for teaching. Professors are also responsible for research. Professors are also responsible for writing grants. Professors are also responsible for service and, a number of other things that you don't get to see. So although we may not be in our office, we're probably somewhere working on something related to our jobs, as a professor. So I think the biggest preconceived notion is that, people think that professors have it easy when in essence, our job never ends. We're always thinking about work, even when we're home. My wife and I are both professors. And I mean, even at night, we're talking about research, we're talking about potential grant opportunities. It's not like we have jobs that ever end. Our jobs are always on our minds, and it's kind of hard to disconnect with the work because of the passion we have in what we do. So
that's really interesting. I think sometimes we have this notion of versus they taught and that's it, that's the end of the day, but like you said, it never really ends. Who are the people or what would you say in terms of your vocational story are you most grateful for?
Oh, okay. First of all, I would just say my parents. Just even though like I said, we didn't have a lot. Just seeing their work ethic and what they did to make sure that we always had food on the table and teaching me responsibilities at a young age. And I would say, once I got to state, the environment was so supportive. So I would say the collective was important. Just being around other African American students who had dreams and goals and seeing people fulfill those dreams and goals, even to this day. And also, I would say some of the mentors that I had when I was here at South Carolina State University. Dr. Thomas Wilson was the department chair of human services when I was a student in the criminal justice program. And I wasn't even considering going to a PhD program. I always thought I wanted to go to law school, but like a lot of students, when I finished undergraduate, I wasn't prepared to take the bar. I don't even think I had the money to take the bar. And so Dr. Wilson came to me and they had just received it was called the Patricia Roberts Harris Fellowship. And if I were to go into counseling, which I didn't know a lot about counseling at the time, but they were offering full tuition. And I think we got a stipend of $833 a month. And for me, I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. But it was, I was thinking it was something I would do until I decided, till I took my LSAT until I was really prepared for law school. But what happened was once I got into the program, I really enjoyed the program. And to be honest, the counseling profession was actually a better fit for my personality than law school would have ever been for the type of person that I am. So, once I completed my master's degree at SC State, Dr. Wilson encouraged me to go on to pursue my PhD. And that's something I had never really considered. And just the opportunities that I was exposed to while I was a student at South Carolina State University, that's really it. That's what really impacted my journey on becoming a professor. Because in addition to the tuition being paid, in addition to the monthly stipend, they also had funds for us for professional development. And they took us to conferences. We got to go to Atlanta. Matter of fact, the first time I've ever been on a plane was a result of that fellowship at South Carolina State University. And there were about 4 of us, and we were all allowed to go to a conference in Minnesota. And at that conference, I connected with the faculty at the University of Iowa. And from that conference, I jumped on a van with some students and traveled to the campus of the University of Iowa. And that's how I ended up in graduate school at the University of Iowa. But all of that was a result of the mentoring relationship that I had with Dr. Wilson, and even teaching me how to network and make contacts that could potentially impact my career. And that's why I'm so passionate about giving back to students and mentoring students when I see potential, like the potential I saw in Terrence Tucker and many of the students that come to the Rehabilitation Counseling program. That's just my way of what was given to me at South Carolina State University.
Wow, that's such a dynamic story, just to see how it moved and how, like you said, you thought you were going to be a lawyer, and as a result of taking that particular fellowship, and I think the next generation needs to hear that part of the reason why we do Imagine Exposure is a lot of times it's kind of like a palate with food, right? Like on some level we say, oh, I like A, but if you've only been exposed to one thing, like how do you know? You may like this, that, third. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
How would you say that your childhood passions as a kid prepared you for your adult career choice?
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent question. I would just say the things that I was probably most passionate about as a kid was sports. I mean, believe it or not, I was probably about 150 pounds lighter when I was a kid. So I was very involved in sports. I was, in my mind, I was a really good athlete and basketball player. And I played high school basketball. I was an intramural all-star at South Carolina, in my own mind, that is.
Yeah.
So I always had a passion for sports. I always had a passion for education. I always had a passion for music, particularly hip hop music. But I think what I took from all of those things and what really helped me was that no matter, from sports, I learned that how essential it is to embrace the concept of teamwork. I also learned how important it was to embrace the concept of hard work. And I also learned, the about just the process of working with other individuals. And those are all things that, regardless of your career, you need to be successful. You need to know how to work with people. You need to have a good work ethic. And I think the sports concept really embodies all of those elements. And I think that's kind of what I took away from my childhood years. And those are some things that really stayed with me, even the competitive nature, just wanting to be the best in the profession and whatever it is that we're doing. And you're not just doing something just to be, just to be a part of something. You're doing something to be the very best at it. And I take that attitude, it's something we don't talk about a lot, but the rehabilitation counseling program at South Carolina State University is one of the leading institutions in the nation in terms of pushing graduates to go on to pursue PhDs. I mean, we're probably number one. And we have graduates that have gone through that program, and 99% of them, were able to go through the program on a grant that paid their tuition, and also they also received monthly stipends. So that goes back to what I was given when I was a student, and it also fueled my passion for wanting to come back and to be able to write grants to make sure that the program always had funds and resources, so that we could share with students some of the same things that I had when I was a student at South Carolina State University. So we're very competitive and very aggressive when it comes to, writing grants and going after research dollars for the students.
And it's awesome to hear it's full circle and everything. Mentorship, grant writing. It's kind of this concept of like really an ideal story. When we think about the historically Black college, the HBCU, kind of that overarching theme. And I don't know if other organizations have pulled this, but I think of the concept of lifting as we climb, the concept of like being able to go in and to transition someone wherever they may be, and to raise them up, and then from there they pull up the next in their communities, etc. And so to see that life story actually play out that way is awesome.
Oh, it's awesome. It is.
For sure. All right, so this is going to be a hard one for you.
Okay.
I believe. I mean, I know that you are definitely a brilliant man, and you'll pull it together. But it's going to be difficult because it's about the economy of words. Now, of course, as someone who, of course, puts together HBCU Times, it shouldn't be a problem. But Can you explain what you do in one sentence, then explain what you do in one word?
Okay. Explain what I do in one sentence.
As a professional, in one sentence, and then do it in one word.
I assist people to enhance the quality of their lives. And what I do in one word, impact.
There you go. I love it. Okay. What do you love the most about your job?
I think what I love the most about my job is that, I'll tell you another story. When I first graduated from my PhD program, before I found a job counseling in Lancaster, one of the first jobs I interviewed for was actually a job as a counselor in the prison. So I was at Lee Correctional Institute, and I was applying for a job. And when I walked in and they started, locking the doors and unlocking the doors, and just seeing all of these brothers, locked up and confined in shackles, etc. Coming from an environment where I had been a student, for the past, 10, 12 years in undergrad and graduate school, and watching, people, filled with hope and optimism. And then on the flip side, going into an environment where there was not a lot of hope, and people were depressed and it was dark. It was an environment that I really could not see myself working in, because it made me depressed just being in that particular environment. So I think what I learned from that is to really appreciate, the education and the training that I have, and also the number of options that I have as a professional. And what I love most about my job as a professor is that I get to see, students filled with hope and optimism about what they could possibly, become in the future. And just working in that environment, I think it keeps me young as well. And, just watching the students flourish and become successful. I mean, that's really what I enjoy most about the job. Right now, the young lady who is the commissioner for the entire state of South Carolina Vocational Rehabilitation Department is a student named Felicia Johnson, who graduated from the program. Remember when Lindsey Graham was debating in the Senate debates, and he said his sister graduated from SC State. I don't know if you were watching him and Jamie Harris debate, but one day he tried to play the, I have some HBCU roots, card as well. And he
Mm.
said, my sister graduated from SC State. What he didn't say was his sister graduated from the rehab counseling program at SC State, and she is also the commissioner for the South Carolina Commission for the Blind. And then
Mm.
about 2 weeks ago, we had a student, Natasha, I can't remember her married name, but she was just promoted to the area director for the Orangeburg Department of Mental Health. So for
Mm.
me, in a short period of time, just seeing all of these individuals coming from various backgrounds, many of them first generation college students like
Mhm.
myself, just transform and become from these professionals and not just surviving, but thriving in the profession and watching them manage. Felicia Johnson is managing a budget over, $60 million. And knowing that she graduated from SC State and I had a hand in, assisting and mentoring and teaching, to me, that really makes me feel, very satisfied in what I'm doing as a professor. And also the other thing I love about being a professor is that we have autonomy. Even though, we're charged to do research, we get to select, what topics we work on. Even though we're charged to pursue grants, we get to pick what type of grants, we go after. And because of the things that I benefited from as a student at SC State, that's why I'm always going after grants that directly benefit students in terms of training grants and being able to provide scholarships and tuition and living expenses for students. So I think as professors, we have a ton of autonomy in terms of how we work. And I with my ADHD, I can't see myself sitting at a desk from 9 to 5. That would be very challenging for me.
Okay, it's very interesting that it's not on the card, but it's so um, important and impactful that you just said you have ADHD, but you also are a professor. You also write grants. You also do mentorship. You also have a job never sleeps. You also are the pioneer that started the HBCU Times Magazine. And so it's just like, wow, it's so amazing. I believe what God can do. I believe what so many people who have invested in your life. And I feel like just it's awesome just to hear your entire story. So thank you for sharing that. What would you say has been the biggest challenge in your work?
I think the biggest challenge in my work, I'll use SC State because that is my primary employment. I think the biggest challenge in my work is just looking at just some of the systemic issues on the campus in relation to productivity and knowing that we should be further along in many regards, and watching other HBCUs like North Carolina A&T kind of thrive with enrollment. I think they have close to 13,000 students. When I was a student at SC State in the 90s, SC State had close to 5,000 students. A&T probably had close to 5,000 students. Now SC State has approximately 1,700 full-time equivalency of students, while A&T has 13,000 students. And to me, it's very frustrating, knowing that I have a lot of suggestions and knowing that the alums offer a lot of suggestions that aren't really taken into consideration in terms of ways that we can move the university forward. So for me, that is very frustrating to kind of to watch, what's going on at the university, not just as a professor, but as an alum and as a student who kind of grew up on the campus idolizing South Carolina State University. So to me, it's very challenging. I'm also the faculty senate president at South Carolina State University. So, I'm always advocating, I'm always, pushing the university to be the best university possible moving forward. But it's very, very challenging.
I bet. I bet. All right. So in terms of your next question is, what steps, must a person accomplish to either become certified or respected in your particular profession? And you have several, but what is it? What must you do to either become certified or respected?
Well, I would say to become certified in the profession, you have to complete 60 hours of post, bachelor work. So it used to be 48 hours, but now you need 60 hours to get a license in rehabilitation counseling. So the first step is you must take and pass what's called the National Counselor Examination. After you take and pass the National Counselor Examination, you have to complete 2 years of clinical work, basically where you provide approximately 1,600 hours of counseling, individual counseling services to actual clients. And then after that, you become fully certified or fully licensed as a counselor. I am a licensed professional counselor, and that is something that we also encourage all of our students to do upon graduating. We always use the analogy, what's the use of going to law school if you're not going to take and pass the bar examination? So we say, why even invest $15,000 to $20,000 in a counseling program if you're not going to become a licensed professional counselor or a certified rehabilitation counselor? So, but the steps are pretty clear, and we have, we definitely have a very high pass rate of students who seek to become credentialed in the area of counseling. That's something we're proud of as well.
Awesome. You also are the founder of HBCU Times Magazine, which is a totally different, but very impactful, influential. What would you say you have found your readers? What did they respect you for in that arena?
I think they respect me for most of the feedback I get about the magazine is just the professional look of the magazine and the content. The purpose of the HBCU Times Magazine really is to promote, highlight, and underscore only positive stories about HBCUs and our HBCU alums. So at a time where all you hear a lot of negative information related to HBCUs and who's losing accreditation and who's about to lose accreditation, what president scandal is going on. The HBCU Times does not focus on any of that. In fact, all of our stories about presidents, they're always positive stories. So we tell another side of the story. And I think the feedback that we get is that the HBCU Times is like a breath of fresh air, and that we really do promote HBCUs in a positive light. And we tell stories that aren't often told about HBCUs, and not just your larger HBCUs, but your smaller HBCUs as well. Most of the time in mainstream media, all you hear about is Howard or A&T or Hampton. Rarely do you hear about Lane College or Stillman College and some of your smaller HBCUs. And this issue in particular, we have a story about a young man who recently graduated from Stillman College. We have one of our power alums is a graduate of Lane College. So we want to expose some of the smaller HBCUs.
Absolutely. And I will just say, just for the record, I am a subscriber. I love y'all's stories and just the range and the topics you guys cover. And I think you do great jobs. Be more nuanced engagement with sometimes with sorority fraternities. Sometimes you guys engage things that tied around grants and scholarships and different incentives. And it's a great magazine to engage either the print or the digital version. So yeah,
man, thank you so much for supporting. And you were one of the first subscribers, and definitely in the first year you actually subscribed and got a 2-year subscription, and you recently renewed your subscription. So I definitely thank you for your support of the HBCU Times Magazine. Much appreciated.
Absolutely. Well, if we can do to get the word out, it's a great magazine. What would you say in the background to this question is I talked to some different colleagues from different backgrounds, and one of the things that was often communicated was from our experience as African Americans, our community. We don't often talk about negotiation, right? That's something that it's this taboo topic, and my question is just, how does a person need to negotiate salary or the value of their services in their career choice?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it all starts with, you have to do the research and the background information to find out, what the market value is for your skill set, especially as a professor, that information, depending on your occupation, some data is readily available and not hard to find. So it's easy to go online and find out, what faculty are making at SC State or what faculty are making at Clemson or your state supported schools. The Chronicle of Higher Education publishes the salaries of faculty all across the country. So it's very easy to figure out a range of salary for faculty. So I think when you're applying for a job and you're in the position and you've been offered a job, the best way to negotiate is by having knowledge of what you should receive as a professional. And you have to have an absolute minimum that you will work for and something aspirational, what you're really going for. And I think you're in a position to negotiate when you know those things about yourself. A second caveat, it's always easier to negotiate when you already have a job. It's very difficult sometimes to play that hard line with negotiation if you don't have a job, because you don't want to lose an opportunity because your rate was too high. But that's why I think it's absolutely critical to to know the range of what people are already making, so you're not asking for something that's excessive. You don't want to eliminate yourself by asking for a salary that's too high, but at the same time, you don't want to, sell your services short by accepting a salary that's too low. And I mean, you basically should have an idea of what your worth is too. But like I said, it's easier to negotiate when you already have a job. I remember when I first graduated from college, and I basically took the first offer that they made me as a counselor because I was just so ready to work and I was unemployed. And so there really wasn't a lot of space to negotiate. I didn't have anything to fall back on. But, as you get further along in your career and you're already in a career, it is so much easier to negotiate. But just to summarize, I think it's important to just kind of know your market value and have realistic expectations going.
Awesome. All right. All right. So this is the time machine question. Time machine. If you can get in the time machine, based on what you know now about your vocation, what advice would you give yourself on the first day of the job?
I think that's an excellent question. I think the advice that I would give myself would just be to be more disciplined in my approach to finances and learning more about finances. I wish I had known different things about finances at a younger age. And, if I also had a chance to talk to a younger version of myself, I probably would have, double majored in business, because as I ventured out from being a professor to an entrepreneur, one of the things that I was lacking was a sound background in business. So a lot of things I'm having to learn on the fly. I'm having to play catch up and read myself. But I really wished if I had known my future was going to, have me become an entrepreneur, I would have spent more time trying to learn and manage and master the concepts of having a business, because it really kind of started out as me just having fun and really kind of wanting to give back. But then when you get serious about it and you realize that you have deficiencies because you don't have a background in business, you do what you can as an entrepreneur to kind of bridge those gaps. So I think every professional should have some courses in business. No matter what your main undergraduate major is, I think that would have helped me to be a better all-around professional. And I could be focusing on other aspects of the business versus trying to bring myself up to speed on business philosophies and principles.
All right. thinking about Endgame, thinking about retirement, how do you plan to one day transition from your job? Like what is the Endgame for Dr. David Staten?
Yeah, I think my end game is to, continue to invest as much as I can into my 401k to always give back. But I think as I think about retiring and thinking about transitioning, just continuing to build up my private businesses, my counseling practice, and also the HBCU Times Magazine. But I want to build them up to a place where I'm not necessarily the person that's overseeing all of the day-to-day activities. I want to eventually franchise, both of those things, so they're operating without my presence, and that's something that I'll be able to pass on. I have a 7-year-old son named Jordan. That's something I want to be able to pass on to him and have him to be a part of the family, business, and not to have to work as hard as daddy had to work. So part of my end game in retirement is just preparing to transition and to elevate my business and brand to a place where my wife and I can relax and enjoy our life and not be so involved in the business, and having other people to be able to take care of the day-to-day of the businesses that we run.
And I just want to say to our guests or to the next generations hearing that's a plan. That's an exceptional plan, and something that we can all try to emulate, something that we can pull from. So much that was said there in terms of assets, in terms of transitioning, having that plan for the transition, which is so important. Last two questions. We like to ask for a Cultivate Countdown, and the method behind the madness here is when we put this up either through a meme or we put it up on Pinterest, that sort of thing. A lot of people like to get the connection. Now, of course, you can't do everything that you did in 5 steps or 3 steps or that sort of thing, but it is a good way of having someone who is an expert just give their advice. And so what would you say is your Cultivate Countdown as it pertains to your profession?
Mm-hmm. I would just say, everything, no matter what you do in life, I think it starts with a realistic assessment, kind of understanding the landscape. After you assess, I think you have to use that assessment to plan. After you plan, assess, plan, set goals, and then execute, and then repeat. So, just to kind of give it to you in a nutshell: to assess, plan, set goals, execute, revise as you go along, and then repeat. And I think, no matter what you decide to do in life, you can always use those small steps, what are really based on a scientific method. Everything starts with a hypothesis. And counseling, no matter what client we see, we always start intake information. After we do the intake, and we gather data, we do an assessment. After we do an assessment, we work with the client or consumer to develop goals. After you have your goals, you come up with your plan of intervention, and then you revise those things as you go along and you follow up. And I think those principles can pretty much be applied regardless of your profession and what it is you want to do. You need to start with intaking of information and a thorough assessment of what it is you want to do. Formulate goals. You got to have a vision. You have to make the vision plain. Then you execute the vision, and then you revise it as you go along. So,
excellent. So when we put out the meme, the banner that has your unique quote, what is the one thing, when people are they're looking over your life's work and they're looking at those quotes, quotes.com, things like that. What would the quote associated with Dr. David Staten from you? What would that quote be?
I don't know if I have a quote, but I think I have a philosophy. And one thing I really hate is like just hearing people, and some people are so talented conceptually and they come up with ideas and they never get an opportunity, or they don't have the ability to take that idea to the next level. I get just so frustrated. And for me, if you have a great idea, and it's something that you want to do, I think you have to, stop talking and start working. So, I think that's kind of the philosophy that I would like to share. Don't talk about it, be about it. And that's what you hear. You hear people talking about, man, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, but they never get around to it. And the reason why they never get around to it is because they never take the first step. If you want to start a business, it takes literally 10 to 15 minutes to go online and to apply for a business and have an LLC. So my advice would be to stop talking and show some action and move towards that vision that's in your head. So that's kind of a philosophy I would like to leave with people. And that's one thing I do. And my wife said, don't you start nary another business, bro. But like we have downtime. I'm always thinking about, what can we do to fill a need or to have an impact. But right now, I have a moratorium on starting anything new. And, I respect that. So.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I tell people all the time, Raise to Cultivate, this business right here, start with $182 for the certificate of existence. So, of course, each business is different, but start that LLC. You have savings, of course, you put into it, but go ahead and get it. Go.
That's right.
So, Dr. Staten, thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, your insight. Are there any places that we can find you, places that we can connect to some of the things that you're doing, all the wonderful businesses that you have getting off the ground? So how can we find you?
Yeah, if you, you can find me, if you're looking for the HBCU Times Magazine, you can find me on Facebook. Just type in HBCU Times. If you want to look for me on Instagram, it's lowercase letters, HBCU _ times 8892. That's on Instagram. That's the best way to find me. If you're looking for a counselor, you can find us at mergecounseling.com. That's MREGE 378.com. And MERGE basically is an acronym that stands for Maximizing Existing Resources to Generate Excellence. And we feel that in order to be successful, everything that you need to be successful is already in your environment. So we're just trying to help you maximize the resources that are already available to you to help you generate the excellent life. And if you're looking for me at South Carolina State University, is dstaten at scsu.edu. That's my email address at South Carolina State University. And, look forward to hearing from you guys.
Dr. Staten, thank you so very, very much. Really appreciate everything. Thank you for being on our podcast.
Hey, man, it was an absolute pleasure, man. Keep up the great work, and I look forward to seeing more from you in the future, okay?
Sounds good. Have a good one.
I just put your new issue of the HBCU Times Magazine in the mail today, so you will have that before the end of this week.
That is excellent. And I cannot recommend a magazine higher. So, but you have a great day. Thank you so much, sir. Have a good day.
All right, you too. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right.